Hey, what's going on? Welcome to Built for the Stage podcast. This is Joe Roscoe, founder and host of Built for the Stage, Broadway's #1 fitness platform with clients in over 20 Broadway shows, stages on the West End in London, Australia, Disney performances in Hong Kong, collegiate stages across the globe. Really, we are your one-stop shop for all things theater and fitness. I started as an actor 18 years ago and a trainer as well. So we are here to help you train like the actor athlete that you are. If you want, hop on over to builtforthestage.com. You can work with me for free at no cost, no catch, and see what you think of it. All right, special guest, as always. Really excited about this one because I'm a pretty big nerd about this old school movie that they have made into a musical. It's had its, I guess, hurdles to jump over in the midst of the pandemic. I know that we don't even want to talk about it, that it was a thing. But anyways, the course in which we got to this point where the show's finally about to open on Broadway has been one of ups and downs. We're excited to chat with our guest about it. The musical I'm talking about is The Notebook, where our guest is starring as the lead character, Noah, who you might remember from none other than Ryan Gosling. I'm really excited to have this show now be put to music. I listened to one of the demo tracks on Spotify just recently. So yeah, I'm jazzed up about it. You've also seen our guest on Broadway in Hamilton. Playbill listed our guest as like every role on Hamilton pretty much. Just like scanning through it, looks like there's like over 10 roles. So excited to chat with him about, I don't know, that experience. It's also been seen in Waitress and Wicked. Please welcome to Built for the Stage podcast, Ryan Vasquez. Hey, Ryan, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going? Good to see you.
Going great. Over here in London, thanks for making the time to chat with me over there in the States. You just said that you're going to be opening The Notebook on Thursday. Tell me about, I guess, just the overall feelings, excitement, anxiousness.
Yeah.
What are you experiencing over there as each day is getting closer? We're just 2 days away.
Yeah, it's been amazing. Like I've been developing this show since 2020, since before the pandemic, and so of course, like the impossibility of it throughout the last couple of years has really weighed on us, and to be at this point is just like surreal. I'm really excited. I think folks have been really enjoying it. The audiences have been nutty. It's been awesome. So I'm pumped. I'm really excited to share it with more and more folks. It's gonna be cool.
Okay, awesome. When you first started to hear the music that was brought into this story, what were your first thoughts on it? Again, the storyline alone is one that has moved people forever as far as the movie goes. Just tell us a little bit about how the addition to it being a musical has enhanced, I guess, the story.
Yeah, it really sings. That's the biggest thing. I mean, like whenever I see a show, I sort of think like, okay, even hear about something being adapted. It's like, what about this makes it sing? What about it is sort of surreal? What about it is like emotionally impactful enough to imbue with music? And The Notebook, like more than the romance of it, which is of course like scored beautifully, it's a story about like just life and loss and your whole lifetime and the decisions you make and where it brings you to and with whom. And so it's really like capital R romantic, right? Not just like
Right.
the romance of the relationship. And so, yeah, I mean, the music really drew me to it initially. Ingrid did an amazing job. And one thing that I think is really cool about our show is that it's scored throughout. I mean, it's not just songs shoehorned into these moments that you remember from a movie or a book. And more pop composers and pop artists, it feels like, are composing music for theater in that way. It's not just limited to the jukebox show anymore. That's hits that people already know. It's a pop artist really making a foray into something that's totally new for them and scoring a whole cohesive, coherent score. And Ingrid did an amazing job with that, with Carmel Dean and John Clancy, who have supervised and orchestrated it respectively. So it's been just like, to see it come to life in that way is amazing. And I think audiences are responding similarly, sort of not knowing what to expect, and then really moved by that addition to the story. So,
Well, during the rehearsals or the workshopping, all of that, was that nuance of this kind of new style of how it was composed something to adjust to, or was it just a natural evolution just because of how well it was done?
I mean, a little of both for sure. I mean, like, it is so well done, and Ingrid is so skilled that, of course, like, she wasn't bringing in songs that were like bad. You know, they're incredible songs. But I think what's been cool is watching, you know, Ingrid and Becca Brunstetter, who wrote the book as well, who has never written the book of a musical before, to my knowledge. It's like these folks coming in who are experts at what they do, and then working with people who are in our community, like our directors and folks around, to, and even the actors, to be able to really create something that's like was made by community. You know, like it's not just Ingrid came with 15 songs saying these are the 15 songs we're using. It's a collaborative process about, okay, how does this serve the story? Do we need to alter this part of the song? Do we need to rewrite it entirely? And while she's been pretty dead on from the jump with most of it, it's been really cool to like watch folks come in with so much raw material that is so great and be able to make it a musical, not just make it songs in a show, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So going back to me kind of bringing up and chatting about how the pandemic had something to play in this, and how I guess the ramping up to all this was a little choppy. What was some of the things, besides maybe just waiting, that you as a cast and team had to overcome in all of this?
Sure. I mean, what's cool is, like, I mean, the adaptation that artists made throughout the pandemic, right? To be able to continue to work and survive and create was really put on display, I think, with our show. Like, we did readings on Zoom, of course, which if for those listening, if you did any of these like Zoom readings throughout the pandemic, had varying levels of success, right? But I think we really integrated technology in a cool way. I mean, we were recording demos that we were overlaying into the reading so we could get a sense of timing. And I think it really speaks to the genius of the directors, Michael Greif and Shelley Williams, to be able to watch a Zoom reading and read the timing in it, and to be able to envision and stage the show in a way that, you know, was basically baked by the time we finally got to Chicago. The ideas were pretty solid. You know, it wasn't like we ran into a ton of hurdles when we got into the space together, because we had done so much of this work sort of incubated on our own in these like silos. So that actually really worked out. Whereas, you know, the danger, of course, would have been you would have created this whole show in your mind and then realized when you had bodies in space that it wasn't going to work. So the foresight for that was really impressive to me. And of course, like, you know, the waiting was brutal, but it allowed us to all sort of become more fully human, I think. And like I said, like, I think the show really solidified as something that's about the human experience and the human life, because we were living such painful and deep connective lives, like during that time, with not only each other, but, you know, like with our loved ones. And so and without our loved ones, famously, you know. So yeah, I think it allowed the show to sort of breathe in a way that we were brave enough to step into the space, that it wasn't always about you know, just this like sort of candied relationship between two people. And what's interesting is, you know, we were delayed, of course, because of the initial wave of the pandemic, but Omicron and all these other variants that pushed our show further. And in those times when it was, you know, really dark, I remember thinking, this may be sort of a blessing in disguise for the show, because the show is about loss and family and relationship with one another and community and love, and these things that were really being tested during that time. And I'm not sure that audiences would have been as receptive as they are now, with a tiny bit of distance from it, to be able to start. I mean, I thought it was interesting in your intro, you know, of course, like, it's not a pleasant experience to remember the pandemic, but it did happen. And that sort of therapeutic examination of it is, I think, something that the Notebook sort of doesn't, of course, address. It's not about that, but the themes of it are things we were thinking about throughout the last couple of years. And so I think we're hitting a nerve that's not so open that it's painful, but that people can feel sort of wistfully connected to in a way that we can handle now. So I think it's coming at the perfect time.
Yeah. I saw some shots of some of the media content about the show and noticed you as your character had some tattoos on the arm, or this was something different than what we might have remembered from the movie. So the whole premise of me bringing this up is, as we're prepping to see the show, which I'm anxiously awaiting to come and attend, are we expecting to just walk into the theater and essentially see the movie with music added in, or are there elements of the show that aren't recognizable from the movie that are either altered or added in or taken out?
Yeah,
Obviously, whatever
sure.
you're allowed to share, but yeah, what can the audience expect when coming to see the musical version of The Notebook?
Totally. I mean, this is the danger with adaptations, right? Like, there have been a lot of adaptations that have been sort of regurgitations of movies with or books with songs sort of shoehorned in. And I think there's a certain comfort to that. Of course, we're definitely in our nostalgia era as a world and as a country right now. I mean, like the reboots and the adaptations and things, not just on Broadway, but I mean, TV, film, everything, right? So it is, of course, going to be comfortable for people who know and love the movie. Those flashpoints are in there. It's no secret. Like, there's rain, right? Like, there are these moments like we do make sure to honor the book and the movie. But I think what's neat about the show is that it exists really as its own entity in the Notebook, like, franchise. So now there's this unique musical entity that can accompany the book or the movie if you've loved it. But if you've never seen it or you have no familiarity with it, you don't need that familiarity to come in and enjoy the show. And I think, when you mention the tattoos, it's funny. You're like, your character has these tattoos. Like, those are my tattoos. Like, like, I have those tattoos myself. And so what's
amazing.
I think cool,
Okay.
yeah. So what I think is cool about it is, like, they were really, and you see it with the folks that they cast and just the spirits that they brought to the show. Like, they are really looking to have people bring their authentic experience in their lives to the show in general. And so you see the show take place in these three eras with these three different couples, but the couples look different, are bringing different life experience to those things. And it speaks to the universality of it, but it also, I think, speaks to a real specificity that, we're bringing our specific selves to these roles, just like in life, we bring specific selves to every experience that we have. And we're different when we're 18 than when we're 28, than when we're 70, like we're growing and moving through the world. And so I think being able to bring ourselves to the show is something you also don't see a lot in adaptations. You want to mirror exactly what they've done in the movie to give a comfort. And while we're definitely not, like, bucking the movie or the book, we're certainly, I think, both honoring and, like, bringing an individuality to it. So it's a nice balance, I think.
Yeah, with the book or the movie comes either certain challenges or certain opportunities to expand creativity on making certain moments happen. Example being the rain, or just the simplicity of a movie can just, you're transitioning from a scene to another, a moment to another, just in the matter of cutting a shot. When on stage, this provides, again, another type of challenge. When rehearsing or putting this on the stage, how was that, let's say, tech process, or how was that rehearsal process of, okay, these are how we are going to interpret or bring these moments to life when putting this on the stage?
Oh, totally. And that's a great example of, in a movie, you can cut scene to scene in an instant, right? But in theater, you just physically can't do it. But what's cool about The Notebook is that it's a memory play, right? Like, older Allie is dealing with Alzheimer's, and it's getting worse and worse throughout the show. And so she is, the older Noah is, of course, like, guiding her through the memories without her knowing that they're her. And I think there's something to the fragmented nature of memory that you can really accomplish in theater uniquely. Of course, you can do quick cuts in movies and things, but in theater, you can have things happening simultaneously that you can view as a composite and see generations of people all working at the same time, going through a similar or different moment or whatever. And you can also zero in on something super small and sort of cut the space in two, right? And so even the way the rain is done, it's pretty fragmented. It's happening. It's a huge amount of rain. It's not going to be a letdown, I promise. But I mean, the way that they've sort of fragmented the stage with light and side light, Ben Stanton did an awesome job with that. I mean, just like the whole thing speaks to this like fragmented memory play of it. So, and in terms of tech and creating those moments, I mean, it's cool to be able to share space with yourself in different generations, right? Which is cool. It's not something you get to do a lot of on stage. And then of course, like having those hyper realistic moments too, where there's no older version watching you or anything. It's like it's existing in real time. So I think we really embrace the theatricality of it, which is nice. It's not like we're not hiding from the fact that, there are scene changes happening. It's like we want to see it because that's what's going on in her mind, right? So super clever.
Nice. Well, we're going to hop off the Notebook train. We're all excited for you on Thursday. Break all the legs. Wishing you all the best. Can't wait to see it when I return to the States. But let's get to know you just a bit more. I was looking that you went to Michigan for musical theater, and you, I guess, presumably, you wanted to do this from birth. How did we get from 0 to age 18 where Ryan's going to study to be an actor?
Yeah, so I grew up in San Jose, California. It happens to be the home of the largest children's theater in the country. They cast everybody who auditions, Children's Musical Theater of San Jose, it's called. And so there are folks, because it casts everybody, there are folks who are doing it to build community, of course. And then there are people who throughout that time are sort of realizing maybe this is something that I want to do. And every couple years, there are folks who really soar out of there and go to a college program or something like that. And so I really started just to build community as like a hyperactive kid. I think that's a pretty like normal starting place for people who end up pursuing theater. But I did shows there growing up, 3 or 4 shows a year throughout, junior high, elementary school, even junior high and high school. And it was my mom actually who said, if I'm going to help you with your college applications and get you out there, you need to apply to one school for theater, because I think I was pretty I was hesitant to do it because that's all you hear is that this isn't a real career path. You're going to need a plan B, right? There's going to be so too many obstacles. You won't be able to have a life outside of that starving artist lifestyle. And I was pretty dissuaded by people around me. Of course, those people had not pursued it themselves, which I always think is an interesting wrinkle to that logic. But I ended up applying to Michigan. It was the only school I applied to for musical theater. I ended up getting in and really like not looking back. And I, as a funny like anecdote, for those who are maybe thinking about doing this out there and thinking about this, maybe it's not possible. I applied to Yale early because I went to an all boys prep school for high school, and they were it was super academic. And I mean, some of the smartest people I know, like still to this day, they're consulting for these companies. I mean, it's some amazing minds come out of there. And I had a college counselor who was helping me, to apply, and didn't know a lot about applying for schools for theater, but I applied to a lot of schools for academics. And I applied to Yale early and got waitlisted and ended up getting into Michigan, never looking back, got there. And in my dorm, maybe 2 or 3 weeks into my semester at Michigan, I got an email from Yale saying, you're off the waitlist and you've gotten in if you want to just dump ship and come. And, I at that point, like I was so in love with the university and with the program and everything, but it just made me laugh because like, of course, it's just sliding doors, right? Like you can end up anywhere, but you'll always, land where you're supposed to be, I think. So and so I applied to, so I went to Michigan, I graduated, we showcased, and I moved to New York, and sort of just continued down that conveyor belt process of, finding reps, auditioning a ton, not getting a million jobs, and then ending up getting a few. So.
Okay. So the sliding door wasn't open for you when you graduated and you went straight to the Broadway stage. Tell us a little bit about that, where you were auditioning a million times, or what were you doing to make it happen? I love to talk about this because whether it's with our clients and their fitness journey, or it's them expressing just life and career stuff that's going on, as you know, there's a small percentage that might have the quote unquote success, and there's a great percentage that needs to keep just pursuing and pressing forward until their time comes. give us a little bit of insight from your experience as to how it wasn't always just butterflies and rainbows.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, of course. I mean, I came from a single parent household, and my mom is an educator in the public sector. So didn't have a lot of money, had a ton of student loans, moved to New York, and was kind of just gigging around. I mean, I sold my car. I drove my car from California, barely made it to Michigan, and sold it with the help of my mom as a graduation present. So that was my kind of seed money, and then got to New York, and that runs out pretty quickly if you live here and you know. So yeah, I was gigging around and really just like incubating, saving money. I worked, I did some readings here and there, things like that. I had worked I did speech and debate in high school and was pretty successful. And so I ended up coaching online for money and did some sort of weird gigs like that. I mean, but pretty much anything just to be able to make rent. And about 6 months later, I actually worked a ton in the first couple months of living in New York as a reader. I had a friend of mine from college who was working at Telsey, and I started as a reader there, just reading for projects that I wasn't going in for or anything. And I ended up being a reader for Wicked for quite a bit, and met some of my good friends now who I then did the show with and different things. But I saw some folks through their whole process and saw them book it, and peers of mine and stuff. It was pretty cool and exciting. And so when they did have a spot open up in the Broadway company to like that was sort of my type already, I went in and auditioned, and they were actually the folks behind the table were like, "Oh, Ryan's here, like go ahead and take a seat." I was like, "Oh, actually I'm here to audition." They were like, "Oh," they had no idea if I could sing or anything. And so and like after singing for them, I think they were like, "Oh, this might just like work out perfectly." But that's kind of like the short version of it. But of course, like the long version is always more nuanced and complicated. And I think, even Waitress, right? Like I auditioned for the company at ART when they did it out of town a bunch and didn't get it. And it was only after like a spot vacated from somebody leaving to do another show that I was sort of in line and ended up getting it. And being a reader with that casting director for a long time. And I mean, The Notebook came to pass even by that same casting director that I had worked with in these reading sessions, that I had then done Waitress with, a producer of an off-Broadway show that I was doing that was, I was making no money doing that I wanted to do because I loved it. But I mean, that same producer ends up being a producer on The Notebook, and the director ends up working with Alex Lacamoire in London at the time, and Alex Lacamoire's working on this off-Broadway show, and the connective tissue is like underneath it all, but it's never just, I think there's this sort of myth, right? There's this $3, 2 bags, 1 me New York City thing of showing up and auditioning for something and getting the gig. And it's like, there will be months and months and months of building relationships, of going in for things and not getting them, of continuing to do your best. I always liken it to like a balloon. It's like, you're filling up this balloon every time you do anything, whether you're meeting somebody at a restaurant, or you're, auditioning for something, or you're doing a reading that you think is bad and you don't even want to be there, and you're making $100, but it's like all of this stuff is filling up the balloon, and people are seeing you, and you're working with people and all this stuff. And sometimes you're like, this is going to be the time it pops, and it doesn't. But that just means you're putting more air in it. So when it does pop, it's going to be a bigger and bigger thing for you. So I'm really a believer in that. I've had so many close calls, especially in those first couple months, where I thought, and as recently as, in the last year, that I thought, this is really going to happen for me, and this is going to be the thing. You don't get it, but you tried your best and you did good work, and it just ends up really filling the balloon, so that this random person who was in that room, who is the associate director, who didn't say a word while you were in there, then hires you for something that a producer comes and sees, and they put you in a show, and now that show's on Broadway. So, I mean, it really does. It's like layering on this foundation that you can stand on, and it's thankless, but that's really how it works. So.
Okay, I love me an analogy or a metaphor, so definitely going to share that with clients and our followers on social media. I love to reference this book, Never Eat Alone, and it's basically just about what you just said, putting yourself out there, meeting as many people as you can, being available, whether it's for pay, not for pay, just doing what you said, fill the balloon. I wanted to rewind also to you mentioning briefly about you were coaching people online via your speech and debate experience. I wanted to do that because, again, this is something, maybe an imposter syndrome or just self-doubt that I hear a lot from clients that we work with. What, besides just the experience that you had in speech and debate or whatever drove you to do these coachings online, what got you to like take that leap of putting yourself out there? Hey, I have this ability that I could serve you with, and I could hopefully make some money out of it. Tell us just a little bit about that, because I think a lot of our listeners would benefit from it.
Oh yeah, I mean, it takes a sort of balance of delusion and like deep humility to do what we do, right? Like that is the game. Like the game is to be feeling humble enough to understand that you're going to hear no more than anything else, and humble enough to even be emotionally available on stage. Like for me, that takes a deep humility to be able to access whatever you are accessing to feel these things. And you have to have this delusional self-confidence that you can walk out in front of 1,000 people and execute something that is really difficult to execute, and that you are worthy of being in that position so that you're not crumbling under pressure. There's an amazing book called The Inner Game of Tennis that's about like different like sporting, you know, I mean, tennis is a frame for it, but I mean, I'm a big basketball guy, and there's a good like stat in it that Kobe Bryant hit like 90% of his free throws in the last 2 minutes of games that are within 5 points. And for people who don't know sports or basketball or anything, it's like he's coming through in the clutch, right? But in the first quarter, when the game barely matters, he's like in the 80s. Like he's still hitting a ton because he's a professional athlete. But I mean, his mind isn't connected in that same way as in the high stakes moments. And a lot of us, I think, feel that when you're in a pressure situation, like say a pandemic where you're not making a lot of money, or you just moved to New York and you're needing work, and you'll fall because the pressure will crush you. And I think, and the point of Inner Game of Tennis and that analogy in the whole game is that, you know, when you're rehearsed, when you're practiced, when you are uber prepared, that's when the adrenaline and those nerves can help you. And so I think in times when I've felt, you know, whether it's putting myself out there when I haven't had a lot of, like resources, or it's an audition that I really want to get and I'm putting a lot of pressure on myself, being able to be just cold on that material, or being able to really rest on your laurels. You know, what about you are you bringing to something that's truly unique to you that nobody can take away from you? If you're, and I think we tell ourselves that, right? Like, oh, my uniqueness is worthy, but it's like, really think about those things that make you unique. Really think about that and rest on that, because that is like the most solid foundation you can have. Like nobody can take away the fact that, you know, if you're a funny person, like nobody can take your humor away from you. No high stress audition, nothing, right? So rest on those things. And I think speech for me was a time in high school when I was feeling like uber confident and I was really clicking. And so even to access that just put me in a place where I was like, okay, this version of myself is like unabashedly confident and worthy of your time, your resources, your attention. And I am worthy to give you advice, to coach these things, and so, and so being able to put yourself in that space, like really just, and part of rehearsing and being uber prepared is like, you're making the material that space for you. So when you're auditioning and you're walking into something, if you barely know it, or you're going on as an understudy, I mean, I understudied all these roles in Hamilton and I was going on at a moment's notice, sometimes at intermission, right? I mean, like if I wasn't uber prepared for that, I would have just crumbled. The pressure would have been too much. I mean, it's insane to go on in Hamilton in LA, one of the first performances, and you're playing one of these iconic parts. And I mean, it's a lot of pressure. But if you're hyper prepared and hyper focused, that pressure is going to make you soar. And so I've always been one to just really like lean on the laurels of preparation. And so I think, I mean, I hope that's like sort of an answer. But yeah, it's a great book. If anybody's interested, it's really helped me a lot with nerves and things like that.
Yeah, I love what you just said at the very end about the preparation part. If the preparation is it's the proof that you have stacked, and you said unabashedly that you were just willing to say, I'm confident in the space because you have the reps, you have the experience, you have the work. And if you're out there listening and you have the reps and the work and the preparation, then lean on it, like allow yourself to succeed. And if you don't, then that's the issue maybe of why you have the imposter syndrome, because you just simply haven't put the work in that is required for you to feel the way that you need to feel.
Mhm.
So yeah, I love that. Let's to be respectful of your time. I can't believe that you're crunching this time in already, just with how close opening is. So I want to be respectful to it. But let's put you on the hot seat really quick that we do on the podcast. It's super fun. It's nothing to be nervous about or anything, but it's just like a fun way of getting to know you a bit more. So let's begin. Question number one, do you listen to musicals, the genre of music, in your spare time? Or do you just leave that to, business?
I lost you for a sec right on the
Okay,
question.
no problem. What a way to start the hot seat, right?
Yeah, pretty hot. Yeah.
A glitch. So first question, this one gets varied answers or replies from guests. Musicals, the genre. Do you listen to it in your spare time, or do you just leave it for work purposes only?
I think, I mean, I'm a little of both. I think probably most folks are. Like, I definitely listen to things just in the way that I watch TV or anything. Like, there's a research component to it for sure. Like, you want to see where the industry is going. And of course, now being in it, I have friends, like all over the place who are in these shows that I want to listen to. And I'll like revisit a couple albums from like, when I used to listen as a kid. Like, I mean, the fact that Tommy's on Broadway now, like I was obsessed with that show growing up. I like wore that album out, the musical version and the Who album. But so like every once in a while I'll return to something like that I love listening to. But I actually listen to very little music. I listen mostly to like interviews, podcasts, and news content, which is just like bad for me. But that's like, I do find, I find like human nature too interesting to not. But yeah, so kind of down the middle. But if I am listening to music, musical theater is a big portion of it for sure.
Okay, so you already referenced, it was Inner Game of Tennis. Yeah, the book.
Yeah.
Okay, so you gave us that book reference. I'm definitely putting that on my Audible this week. How about a go-to podcast or two that you're always listening to?
Yeah. I listen to a podcast called The Gray Area, a Vox Media podcast that I listen to weekly. Sean Illing is the host of that. They have the best guests on. It's all just about like everything from like, current events to like psychedelics and what that's doing to our brain. Yeah. I mean, you just saw a study this week that like they're starting like small doses of LSD for generalized anxiety and depression and things like that. I mean, I just find I find that to be interesting, but it's also about like, basketball. And I read this book recently, the How Basketball Can Save the World. It's all about just like the communal aspect of basketball and how you can apply it to government and different things. So they do some really cool stuff. I listen to the Ezra Klein pod too. I'm a huge board game guy. So they had a guest on a while back who had written a book about how board games are sort of like a cultural way of expressing yourself in community and stuff that I thought was super interesting. And a fun one I listen to is Las Culturistas. It's Bowen Yang and Matt Rogers, Bowen from SNL and Matt, who writes and is a comedian. And they are just like awesome and hilarious. It's a pop culture podcast. It's fun. And so, yeah, it's not all serious, I promise.
Speaking of board games, have you ever been to like a board game bar?
Yeah.
Totally. I went to one for the first time here in London last week, and it was a library of board games. It was crazy how many there were.
That's like my house, man. Like over here next to my desk is just like stack of board games like as tall as me. There's like they're underneath here, like like in my little thing. Like I take out. Yeah, I love them, man. I love them.
See, that's the purpose of the hot seat, so we get to know things like Ryan's a board game junkie over there.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, last question. You get to choose 1 to 3 people. It could just be 1, 2, 3 to invite to dinner. They could be a real person or a fake person. They could be a cartoon. They could be living or deceased. Who are the 1 to 3 people that you're going to invite to dinner?
I would take Barack Obama. I read his book which not a lot of people have done. It was very long, but he and like the progressive movement really got me into political activism and organizing work and things. And I would just love to pick his brain about his administration and all the sort of BS that he dealt with and different things. Michael Jordan for sure, because I know we'd be rolling dice and playing cards and different things. I do love to gamble, and I'm a huge hoops guy, like, so that would just be too cool. And Jennifer Lewis, I just saw an interview with her recently, and actually she came to see Hamilton in LA, and she was such a good time on stage, and like was like doing cartwheels in her dress and stuff, and like it was just like nutty. So I would to keep it fun, bring Jennifer. Yeah, we'd all be playing cards, and yeah, that'd be fun.
All right, sweet. Okay, Ryan, you're off the hot seat, and that's going to conclude our interview, our chat for today. So appreciative of your time. Everyone that's listening, make sure this Thursday's opening of The Notebook on Broadway. Congratulations. Early break a leg to you. All the best wishes.
Thank you. And come see it. I let me know when you come see it. You're really going to enjoy it. I think it's a gorgeous, gorgeous show.
I'll be there with bells on. I can't wait. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks.
All right, everyone. Ryan Vasquez leading the way as Noah in The Notebook, opening, like I said, on Thursday. Make sure to give Ryan a follow on Instagram. It's Ryan Vasquez. We'll be releasing the podcast here come Monday, so it'll be just a few days after they have opened the show. Super excited for it. Once again, I'm Joe Roscoe with Built for the Stage. If you want to check it out, you can head on over to Instagram as well and go to @BuiltForTheStage. I'm Joe Roscoe. Actors are athletes. Later.